I do not identify as a socialist or whatever it is that folks want to label the Sanders campaign folks. I am not paid to work for the Sanders campaign. I chose to advocate for Bernie Sanders given the programs that he's espousing.
A new ABC News Washington Post poll shows that Bernie Sanders is not only leading the field nationally, but he's also leading the field with moderate voters. Now, this completely flies in the face of all the media scrutiny about, oh, how is Bernie Sanders possibly going to appeal to moderate voters? What do I say all the time? People often don't know how to self-identify. They may think they're moderate, but in reality, they're not really moderate. And they like who they like for whatever reason they like that person. Now, in some cases, they are actually moderates. And I'm going to show you an example of somebody who supports Bernie Sanders, even though she is, in fact, a moderate Democrat. But first, let's look at this the data here from this poll. So here's the ABC News story on it. You see the Democratic primary preference. And Bernie Sanders here surging to 32%, leading the field by a significant margin here. You have Biden dropping considerably, now down in second with 17%. You have Michael Bloomberg continuing to rise with all his money spent on television advertisements, lying about his record, basically fooling people into supporting him by just blanketing the airwaves with the kind of message that he wants to put out about himself. But as you've seen from my reporting on this and countless other reports on Bloomberg and his history, Bloomberg is a horrible candidate, would absolutely suppress the vote. Working class people won't come out for him. People of color won't come out for him. Young people won't come out for him. Bloomberg would be a disaster. But otherwise here you see Warren sort of just maintaining a little bit here. And Buttigieg not really seeing much of a boost from his second place appearances in Iowa and New Hampshire. And Klobuchar going up a little bit, but again, not all that significant. They have a few more breakdowns here. Best chance to defeat Trump. So for a while, people thought that Joe Biden was the best to defeat Trump. Maybe now they are hearing the other arguments now, and Bernie Sanders is now leading in best to defeat Donald Trump. And to me, it's obvious. Joe Biden, just like Michael Bloomberg, their strategy is to appeal to moderate voters or Republican voters, conservative voters. The same strategy that Hillary Clinton had in 2016. It didn't work then. Why is it going to work now? It's not. People that voted in 2016 for Hillary Clinton, 99% of them are going to vote blue no matter who because they want to get Donald Trump out. So they will vote for the Democratic nominee regardless in 2020. So the people you need to bring out in 2020 are the people that did not come out in 2016. Young people, working class voters, progressive independents. Bernie Sanders reaches that base of people. That is his base. So that is how you win in 2020 against Donald Trump. And maybe people are beginning to realize that now. Also, I think there was one more graph here. General election matchups. So here you see Trump and Biden. So Biden still leads here by 1 percentage point, which is really interesting considering that more voters up here say that Sanders is more electable. But in this particular poll, 52% say Biden over Trump compared to 51% for Sanders over Trump, 50% for Bloomberg over Trump. And in all these cases, Trump is at 45%. Trump versus Buttigieg barely wins here. Buttigieg does 49 to 46. Trump, Klobuchar. Klobuchar ekes this one out as well, 48 to 46. And Trump versus Warren, this is the worst one, 48 for Warren, 47 for Trump. Now, as I was saying, when it comes to the moderates, I got to find this piece. Here it is. This is really interesting, and it's funny how they passed this. They passed this off and don't really go too much into it. But this is a very important data point here. Sanders is 41% among liberals, falls to 25% among moderates. So just to be clear, Sanders leads among liberals, of course, with 41%. But he falls. So they say he falls to 25%, but he's actually increasing his lead with moderates compared to before. So yes, it falls for liberals, from 41 to 25 for moderates, But his moderate support is still higher than Joe Biden, who wins 24% of moderates, Bloomberg 17%. So here you're talking about Bernie Sanders winning over both liberals and moderates in the party. And just to be a little more clear here, here we go. At the same time, relatively few leaned Democrats call Sanders too liberal, 17%. Indeed, as many call him too conservative. So they don't even give you the other number here, but Holly Otterbein of Politico looked into the data point, and here it is. Sanders is beating Biden and Bloomberg among moderates, and 20% of adults think Sanders is too conservative. So more voters think Bernie Sanders is too conservative than they think he's too liberal. Again, flying right in the face of all the mainstream press coverage saying, oh, Bernie Sanders he's too liberal or he's too left wing to be able to win an election. More voters think he's actually he's more conservative than he is more liberal. Unbelievable. And I just want to give you more of a breakdown here. Sam Finkelstein, great follow. He breaks down the pluses and minuses here. So this is since January. Bernie's up 11 points since January. Again, with 33. Let me just make sure that is the exact same here. 32. Okay, I gotta look into this a little deeper. But 33 here. 15% with Joe Biden, who's down 19%. This may be a different poll. Okay, so I quickly looked into it. Apparently, the numbers that Sam has here, as they're a little different from what I just showed you, they are. So they put out a couple different numbers here. As he says, there's registered voters and absolutely certain to vote voters. So there are a couple different results from the polling. But it closely resembles what I just showed you from the ABC News story on this. And it does show you, I mean, basically the consistent theme here is that Bernie's rising, Biden's dropping considerably, Bloomberg is rising, and that happens in every case here. So among black voters as well, Biden's dropped massively, 20 points. Bernie up 13, Bloomberg up 7. And among moderate voters, again, Bernie's leading with moderates. He's plus 9. Biden's down 14. Bloomberg's up 8. Now, I want to show you an example of one of these moderate voters that supports Bernie Sanders. So this is Dulhee Myers. She's the vice chair of Richland County Council. This is in South Carolina. This councilwoman, she switched her support from Joe Biden to Bernie Sanders. And she is a self-described moderate voter. And she is actually a moderate voter. She's not one of these people that think she's moderate, but she's not actually moderate. No, she's actually a moderate voter, as you're going to hear. And she explains why she supports Bernie Sanders. Check this out.
So there's a new Quinnipiac poll which finds that Sanders is third when it comes to black voters nationally at just 19%. Do you see an opening for him in South Carolina where, you know, the black electorate is very powerful and sizable and, you know, it's important to appeal to that state if you're a candidate?
So I'm glad you asked that question. I am an atypical, according to the media, Sanders voter. So I am an African-American woman who is pro-life. I am fiscally conservative, and I identify definitely as a Democrat. So to the extent that the media narrative is that Sanders only appeals to very left-wing members of the Democratic Party, I would suggest that perhaps that narrative is shifting when the more people learn about the programs and the prescriptives for big, bold plans, the more attractive the plans are to people just like me. I do not identify as a socialist or whatever it is that folks want to label the Sanders campaign folks. I am not paid to work for the Sanders campaign. I chose to advocate for Bernie Sanders given the programs that he's espousing and what I know the needs are on the ground in South Carolina for the people I represent. So yes, I do think there's an opening here for Sanders or for any candidate who's willing to work hard and put forward programs that make meaningful changes in the lives of everyday people, and I think his programs will.
So I think this is incredible because it shows you the ability that Bernie Sanders and this campaign has to reach voters that may not even agree with him on all the issues. So Bernie Sanders didn't have to compromise or change any of his positions that he's held for a lifetime on any issue to get the support of Dahlia Myers here. But she supports him because she sees the on the ground support that is required to defeat Donald Trump in the fall. And she doesn't see any other campaign have the kind of support or the kind of movement or the kind of volunteers that Bernie Sanders does. So even though she is an actual moderate, she supports Bernie Sanders. And this goes to what I was saying earlier, or what I was showing you earlier in the data points. Even moderate voters back Bernie Sanders. And I think a lot of it is separate. I mean, it's definitely separate from ideology. I think a lot of it is due to people being attracted to Sanders because of his authenticity, because he is a real human being, because he does have this fight, this 40-year plus fight of fighting for the same thing, of fighting for people over special interests. So regardless of many of his positions that maybe people aren't there yet on whatever it is, free public college or Medicare for all, they haven't been convinced yet, but they are convinced that Bernie Sanders is a leader because they've seen him. They've seen old videos of him from the 80s and the 90s, of him fighting for the same thing that he is fighting for now, and doing it when it wasn't politically feasible to do so. Doing it at a time when he got a lot of pushback for doing it. And now, finally, later in his life, he's being recognized as the leader that he's always been, because now the rest of the world is coming, or I should say that the rest of the country at the very least, is now coming to the positions that he has always held. So this goes again to showing you Bernie's electability, and not even just electability, but his opportunity here to really transform the country for the best interests of working people over the interests of massive corporations and the wealthy.